Hey everybody, YT Money Nerd here again. We've covered a couple of different subjects now, so now we're really ready to start building on the previous topics. All these personal finance topics are highly connected, so if you haven't watched the first few videos in the series, I hope you'll consider going back and watching them from the playlist link below. So now we're ready to start talking about the biggest financial goal that you're ever going to have to plan for, retirement. What do you think of when you think about your retirement? Actually, let me start by asking you, do you think about your retirement ever? The absolute number one thing that you should take out of this video is that if you haven't yet, now is the time to start really thinking about your retirement. Many people really don't give too much thought to retirement given our average daily schedule. Between your day-to-day work and home life, it's easy to completely forget that someday way in the future, we're all probably going to want to hang up our hats and leisurely live out our golden years free to live however we want. But I'm here to tell you the cold hard truth that you aren't going to be able to spend your retirement traveling the world and spending your days enjoying your hobbies if you don't make sure to do the planning ahead of time. Now, the first step is going to be figuring out what type of retirement you want to have. If you want to go on multiple trips per year to see the world, that's going to cost a lot more than if you're the type of person that wants to live out their days on a ranch in Montana living the simple life. In the former case, you're going to have to make sure that you've saved aggressively enough to live a more posh lifestyle retirement than in the latter. Either way, it's always going to be better to have a larger retirement fund built up in case of unforeseen expenses, turbulent economic times, or maybe even just because you decide after a few years of retirement that your plan isn't making you happy. Once you understand what type of lifestyle you want to live, you're going to want to start figuring out the costs involved. Add up all of your expected yearly expenses to get a grasp for how much you're going to need each year in retirement. When you do this calculation, don't forget to add a cushion since unexpected expenses are likely to occur. Also, keep in mind that the cost of living always increases due to inflation. Since inflation causes money to lose its value over time, you want to consider that the money you save for retirement will lose close to half of its value every 20 years. If you think that you'll need $50,000 per year when you begin your retirement 20 years from now, understand that you're actually going to want to assume that you'll need closer to $100,000 per year. The course of time brings along many new expenses also. For example, 30 years ago, not too many people would have thought about having to pay a phone bill with an internet plan for their cell phones. Yet, many retirees have become accustomed to this relatively new form of technology. It would be wise to add an additional 10% to whatever number you come out to just to be safe. So now you have your yearly expenses in retirement figured out, but we need to determine what the total dollar amount you need to have saved before you retire will be. When you retire, you're going to continue to live for some time. As of today, the average life expectancy in the United States is around 78 years. Men have a slightly lower life expectancy of around 76 years, while women are slightly higher at around 81 years. Keep in mind that these are averages, with half of all people living longer than that. So it's wise to plan for at least an additional 10 years. The last thing you're going to want in retirement is to run out of money at 80 years old and be faced with having to figure out how to start generating new income. Assuming that you retire at 62, which is the age that you can begin claiming Social Security benefits, you should plan to save up for 25 to 30 years of living expenses. If you plan to retire earlier, make sure that you understand that the first few years of retirement, you won't be able to collect any income from Social Security. Make sure that you have a plan in place to bridge the gap if you're going to be heavily dependent on Social Security income when you retire, and also consider that you'll have to plan for more years of living expenses. If you plan to retire later than 62, you'll be able to reduce the number of years of living expenses that you need to plan for. And by the way, in case you don't already know, Social Security is the retirement benefit system that every American taxpayer pays into. I briefly explained this in the taxes video, but Social Security works by taxpayers today paying for retirees today. When you retire, the taxpayers will pay towards the money you receive as a Social Security benefit. As you pay Social Security taxes throughout your life from the income taxes you pay, you build up credits which are used to determine the amount of Social Security income that you will receive when you file for Social Security in retirement. The amount of income you receive also depends on when you choose to claim your Social Security benefit, with the monthly payment increasing each year beyond age 62 until the full retirement age of 70, when you will receive the maximum monthly benefit. When you choose to begin claiming Social Security can be a difficult decision to make, but there are many resources online that can help you make the best decision for you. For many Americans, Social Security is their main source of retirement income, but you might be surprised at how little this monthly income actually is. If you want to get an idea for yourself how much you will receive from Social Security, you can Google Social Security Quick Calculator to find the government's Quick Calculator. This isn't exact, but you can get a quick rough estimate by filling in the fields. I'll leave the link in the description if you'd like to try for yourself. Now is also a good time to quickly mention Medicare and Medicaid. Many of us have employer-sponsored healthcare where the employer that we work for pays part of the cost of a medical insurance plan. For you, this saves a lot of money on your premiums that you pay in each paycheck. Without your employer subsidizing the cost of healthcare, you would pay significantly more for your health insurance plan. If you retire before age 65, you won't be eligible for either Medicare or Medicaid unless you have a disability or end-stage renal failure. Make sure that you plan for healthcare expenses in the time period prior to you becoming eligible for Medicare and or Medicaid, since this can be upwards of $1,000 each month. As mentioned earlier, it's also very important to make sure that you plan for inflation in your retirement savings. Once you've determined how much money you think you'll need to save for retirement, you'll want to convert that into a future dollar value. Let's take a look at this inflation calculator at smartasset.com. If you determine that your total retirement savings you'll need is $500,000 in today's 2020 dollars, and you plan to retire 20 years from now in 2040, you're going to actually need to save up $819,308 by the time you retire to have the equivalent of $500,000 in today's 2020 dollars. This is assuming a 2.5% annual rate of inflation, but future inflation may be slightly higher or lower. If we flip the dates around, you can see that the $500,000 in 2040 will actually only be the equivalent of $305,138 in today's 2020 dollars. Okay, so now you know how to figure out how much money you're going to need to save up to retire. But how should you save that money? We already know about Social Security, so that will help with part of your retirement savings. But you're very likely to need more than just income from Social Security. If your employer has a retirement plan, that's probably going to be your best option. For most people, this is going to be a 401k plan. You might also be offered a pension plan, a 403b plan, multiple variations of an IRA plan, or others depending on your employer, but these plans are less common. The best feature of a 401k plan is that the money that you put into it doesn't get taxed. You pay no income tax on the money that gets deducted from your paycheck to put into your 401k. This is known as being tax advantaged. Eventually you'll have to pay income tax on this money when you withdraw it, but in the meantime, the money is invested in growing in whatever investments you choose. Later, when you retire, you're likely to be in a lower tax bracket, so you'll actually save yourself money in taxes in the long run. The second feature that many employers offer is a contribution match. This contribution match means that if you invest a certain amount of your paycheck into your 401k, your employer will contribute a specified amount also. It is in your best interest to contribute as much as your employer is willing to match up to, since this is essentially free money. You'll probably want to contribute more even beyond your employer's match amount, but contributing at least up to the match amount is a no-brainer. No matter what type of retirement savings plan your employer offers, contributing up to any match your employer provides is going to be your minimum threshold for contribution. Let's switch gears and talk about another common retirement savings plan, the Roth IRA. Anybody can set up this type of savings plan through the bank of your choosing. This is a tax-advantaged retirement savings account like the 401k that your employer might offer, but instead of your money being taxed when you withdraw it, it only gets taxed when you deposit it to the account. This allows your money to grow in investments without ever having to pay tax on that money ever again, regardless of how much it grows. This can be a very powerful effect if utilized properly. Let's say that you're young and early in your career with a lower income job without a 401k benefit. If you choose to start a Roth IRA, you can take advantage of being in a lower tax bracket than you'll probably be in later in your career. If you allow your investment to be taxed now at a lower rate, you'll end up saving yourself money on taxes in the long run, and allow that money to grow tax-free without ever having to pay tax on it again when you withdraw it in retirement. This might be a great option for you, and one that you should strongly consider if you don't have an employer-sponsored retirement plan, or even as an additional supplement to your employer-sponsored plan. So now let's go ahead and talk more about how your money actually grows in a retirement savings plan. You generally have 3 options for what your money gets invested in within your retirement savings plan, as well as just leaving it in cash. However, leaving it in cash isn't going to generate any return for you, while also making your retirement savings lose value over time due to inflation. The first investment option is money market funds. These generate very little return and won't beat inflation over time, but they are very safe and very liquid. When I talk about this investment being liquid, I mean that you can pull your money out of the investment very quickly and reallocate it into another investment if you so choose. The next type of investment would be bonds. Bond funds allow you to invest in the bonds that companies issue to raise money to finance projects and cover costs that their profits can't immediately cover. These will generally only bring you a modest return, but they are also a generally safe investment. Your money will likely keep pace with inflation, but you shouldn't expect much beyond that. Lastly, we have stocks. Your retirement account will allow you to invest in stock funds which track various stocks. Stocks will generally yield the highest return on your investment, but they are also far more volatile than bonds or money market funds. You're probably going to want to have a mix of stocks and bonds at most times. If you're just starting your career, you probably are going to want to have your investments entirely or almost entirely in stocks. This is because you are very far away from retirement, and this will give your money plenty of time to grow aggressively. You are also going to be much more risk tolerant when you are young, and any downturns your money experiences will be erased in the long run. If you're 30 years or more away from retirement, any negative downturn in the market today will be a small blip on the radar when you look back at retirement. On the contrary, if you're closer to retirement, you're going to want to start reducing your risks and shift into a capital preservation mode. Capital preservation means that you want your money, or capital, to retain its value and be preserved. Nearing retirement, you probably want closer to a 20% stocks and 80% bonds mix. You probably don't want to shift all of your money out of stocks because you're going to want your money to continue to grow and beat inflation in retirement, but risk far less of it to downturns. I would encourage you to research the various fund options available in your retirement savings plan, but nowadays you can also choose to invest in what is called a target date retirement fund. These funds are managed by a professional fund manager to plan for somebody that is planning to retire in a certain year. You just pick a target date retirement fund with a year in the vicinity of when you plan to retire, and the fund manager does all of the picking for you. This makes it easy, but you can probably beat these returns if you're willing to do your own research. If you choose to do your own research, just be wary of keeping your stocks to bonds investment mix in the right range for your risk tolerance, watch out for funds with high fees, and always make sure to diversify and not just pick one single fund. Be aggressive when retirement is far away, but also don't bet the farm on just one stock or one fund. So now we should have a pretty good understanding of how retirement savings work. But let me just say one more thing. That emergency fund that we talked about in the previous videos is going to become very important in the context of your retirement savings. If you experience a job loss or any large unforeseen expenses, your absolute last resort to get yourself by should be withdrawing money from your retirement savings. You're going to want to plan for something like this with your cash emergency savings, because if you start withdrawing money from your retirement savings, you're first going to have to pay income tax on that money that you withdraw, then on top of that, another 10% penalty. So right off the bat, you're losing a ton of money to taxes. Next, you're going to only be sabotaging yourself. When you take that money out, you're going to miss out on the gains that invested money would have been producing. Making up for those lost gains is going to be an uphill battle that you're never going to win. Even if you pay back every penny that you withdrew, that might take you years. Let's say it takes you 5 years to repay that money back into your 401k. Money invested in the stock market tends to produce somewhere between 6 and 10% gains per year on average. Let's say that money could have produced 8% gains per year for those 5 years. That means that by the time you pay that money back, it could have been worth 47% more if you had left it alone and let that 8% gain rate compound for 5 years straight. So to truly pay yourself that money back, you would have to pay an additional 47% back on top of what you initially withdrew. Beyond that first 5 years, the amount that your money could have grown to continues to increase exponentially beyond that 47%. This can absolutely cripple the growth potential of your retirement savings, so make sure to explore every other avenue before you even consider a withdrawal from your retirement savings accounts. I hope you all have enjoyed this video and have a much better understanding now of retirement savings. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to keep seeing more personal finance content. Thanks, and until next time, this is YT Money Nerd signing off.